This team is going back to the playoffs where they belong. What is going on, everybody? My name is Tom Scavetta, joined alongside Hank and Dichter, and we present to you the New York playoff football Giants. Hank, first off, how are you doing today? And secondly, Happy New Year. What was the experience like yesterday at MetLife?
It was absolutely amazing. The drive there wasn't even too bad, so that was probably the first good omen. The second good omen was we got to our seats, and as the countdown to kickoff neared, what do we see but LT coming straight out of that tunnel, riling up the fans. From the minute that happened, there was never a doubt in my mind that the Giants were winning that game. Because, I mean, look, let's face it. How do you not get fired up when the greatest player in franchise history and arguably the greatest linebacker in NFL history enters the building and just riles you up like that? Absolutely unreal. I'm going to get the chills the rest of my life just thinking about that moment. It was absolutely insane. And look, even when the Colts were up 3-0, there was never a doubt in my mind that the Giants were winning this game. And Tom, let me ask you a question. When have you ever heard me utter those words?
Never. Rarely, like maybe once. I envy you for getting to see LT in person. I don't think I ever have, unless he was there at the 2016 Ring of Honor ceremony against the Bengals, but I don't think he was. But yeah, that must have been an awesome experience. Folks, before we dive too much into this football game, I know we're really excited, Hank, to talk playoffs, but we want to wish you all a happy new year. Make sure to check us out if you're new on our social media listed below, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Those are our handles. And a quick reminder, if you love sports betting, sign up with our promo code at BetUS. Join 125, get a 125% sign-up bonus where you can bet on the go anywhere, anytime. That's BetUS, where the game begins with America's #1 favorite sportsbook. But Hank, the Giants defeat the Colts 38-10 to kick off the year of 2023, clinch their first playoff berth since 2016. They lock up the #6 seed in the NFC, and they will likely play the Minnesota Vikings unless something crazy happens next week in Week 18. How reminiscent is this year of 1997? It's the beginning of a new culture, a new day here in the New York, New Jersey area, and I couldn't be more happy and proud of what this team has accomplished this season.
Tom, I think that's well said. And yeah, that's such a good point. Like, the 97 team had similar circumstances. That team was not expected to be very good so soon. It was also the first year of a head coaching reign. And obviously we know this is the first year of the Brian Daboll head coaching reign. And, you know, it's funny that both years also included a tie to the same franchise, I might add. So it's another pretty weird scenario. And you know what else might be a possibility? This team could actually match that win total should they go into Philadelphia and beat the hated Eagles. But I'm not really thinking about that much about that game. I mean, I am in the sense that, like, I want the starters to get a good amount of reps in the half, but we'll talk about that later. I am just completely proud of how this organization turned around. And look, John Mara really wasn't kidding when he said, our fans deserve better. We got to change things. And it's nice to see that he finally changed stuff. Like, up until this year, all you kept hearing about was the Giants hiring people from within the organization and being loyal to a fault. And, you know, it just goes to show you what happens when you adapt to a changing culture in the NFL.
And not only that, but the Giants just seem to be a new team. You know, the faces may change, but the mentality is back. The winning culture is back. I mean, these last few seasons were really, really bad. To put it into perspective, the Giants were tied for the worst record in the NFL over the previous 5 seasons with the New York Football Jets. I shouldn't even.
You want to know a worse part about that?
Yeah.
They were never even above 500 during the past 5 seasons.
And now they're 9-6-1, Hank. And not only that, they finally topped 30 points for the first time since October 11th, 2020. And the offense scored 30 or more points. The defense had the pick six, so the offense technically scored 30, 31, however you want to put that. But the offense is there. Lawrence Taylor in attendance, an outstanding second quarter for the Giants where they outscored the Colts 24-0. I think LT taking the field and maybe that Landon Collins pick six, Hank, were probably the two most monumental moments of this game. Would you agree, or was there something else that stood out to you?
I agree with both of those. I mean, when Landon Collins picked off that ball, I could feel MetLife shaking with every step he took, because you knew no Colt was anywhere near him. No Colt had a chance to tackle him. It was absolutely bananas. But there was one more moment that really gave me chills. And I think I'm going to let you and I talk about that later. But essentially, it was the Daniel Jones chance.
Later. How about now? Why not? Daniel Jones is the franchise QB of the New York Football Giants. And no offense to you, Hank, or anybody else that has ever doubted him. I know you were always pro Jones to an extent.
Yes.
But not as pro Jones as I was.
Right.
I just want to take this moment to tell everybody that we told you so. We told you this kid was good. And he's doing it on a consistent level now because he has the proper coaching. Look how bad Trevor Lawrence was his first year under Urban Meyer. That was Daniel Jones for 3 years. For 3 years because of how bad the offense was. And hell, you look at his stat line on Sunday, and the haters are going to say, well, why didn't he throw for 350 yards? Well, spoiler alert, he didn't have to. He combined for 4 total touchdowns, 19 of 24, 173 yards, 2 touchdown passes. He was not sacked, completed 79% of his passes, had a 97 QBR, 96.9 to be exact, but 97. 11 rushes for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those 4 total touchdowns, a 6-yard pass to Richie James, a guy who was a borderline bubble player in training camp, a 6-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Hodgins, who Hodgins and James are tied for the team lead with 4 touchdown receptions each. And Hodgins wasn't even a Giant to start the season. Jones also had an 18-yard touchdown rush and a 10-yard touchdown rush. He gets a standing ovation and Daniel Jones chants as he exited the game. And this all comes after the day the Giants released Jones's best friend, David Sills V. Hank, what was that moment like when people were chanting Daniel Jones? I know there were Daniel Jones for MVP chants, maybe more for MVP of the team this season rather than the league. We're not going to go that far. He's not the MVP of the league. We're not saying that. But you can argue he was the MVP of the team this season. There is an argument for that. And he deserved it. But walk me through that moment where Jones was honored by being taken out of the game for good reason.
So here was my thought process after that particular drive, because this was right after the Giants made it 38-10 and essentially iced away the game. When Daniel Jones came out, I was a little confused. I'm like, why is he still playing? Why don't you just bench him, let Tyrod Taylor play? Because the game's obviously over. You don't need to have him come in. But then only later did I realize that they wanted to formally remove him from the game on purpose so that the fans could have that chant. And when the whole stadium kept chanting Daniel Jones, it gave me so much chills. And look, it doesn't matter to me that like a good fraction of those fans chanting Daniel Jones may have been the same ones that were probably getting on his case every now and then. Just to hear the whole stadium show their appreciation for a quarterback who really has been able to prove himself this year, that was just so satisfying. And it was amazing. I can't even describe enough how it was.
Can you confirm to me if Eddie McQuaid was part of that chant?
I think he might have been.
Okay.
I think he might have been.
Okay. I would hope so.
He was in a different section than I was. We just met up during halftime.
I will say this: Daniel Jones is not perfect by any stretch, but in my opinion, he's been the MVP of the team this season. In a game where I thought the Colts did a pretty good job containing Saquon Barkley. 12 rushes for 58 yards. Barkley had high praise for Jones in a post-game interview, mentioning that Barkley always prides himself into getting to the facility early, and there's always one car there before him, and it's Daniel Jones's car. And you know, a lot of people like to compare quarterbacks. I don't. I like to focus on my own quarterback. And Daniel Jones has always prided himself in being a consummate professional, whether it was during the dark days with Pat Shurmur or the continued worrisome days with Joe Judge. Daniel Jones showed up to practice. He was a professional. He always studied the playbook. He always took that extra step, an extra mile, and he deserves to be rewarded for that. And it was leaked out today, Hank, by Big Blue Zone or whatever it was, that during the offseason, Brian Daboll was putting Jones in practice in positions to fail and putting positions in Tyrod Taylor to succeed, and see how Daniel Jones would handle that adversity. And when Jones responded well and rang that bell, Daboll knew. Daboll knew.
Not only did he respond well, he wasn't even phased.
No.
He was not even phased. And, you know, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, we got to talk about our guy Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
5 tackles, the sack, and then the sack obviously knocked out Nick Foles. And Tom, I don't know about you, but I did not think he was doing that deliberately. Like, he couldn't have even seen Nick Foles. If you watch like the whole tape play.
Here's my take on it, and it might be a little different from yours. He should not have been doing snow angels after the sack. I thought that was a little uncalled for, but and I know he was right next to him. I think he's telling the truth. He didn't see Foles. I mean, look, we saw Lawrence Taylor's reaction when he broke Joe Theismann's leg. I think Thibodeau would have had a similar reaction if he realized Foles was thriving on the ground in pain with cracked ribs, which is definitely what he had. You know, and it's a shame that Nick Foles got hurt like that, but unfortunately, Thibodeau is going to be a problem for opposing quarterbacks throughout his career, and he proved to be a quarterback problem again, getting his 4th sack of the season. I mean, the first play of the game, he had a tackle for loss on Zach Moss. It was the first snap of the game. He's in the backfield, just plowing through a Colts offensive line that has struggled a lot this year, but you know, over the last few years, they've been really, really good. And I think part of that is, you know, Dexter Lawrence, what he does up the middle, Hank, consuming defenders. Dexter Lawrence just ran through all-pro guard Quentin Nelson. I know he struggled this year, but he's still arguably the best guard in the National Football League. He plowed him over and took down the quarterback in the process. Dexter Lawrence, 5 tackles, 1 sack, 1 TFL, and 3 quarterback hits. I don't care what anyone says. Dexter Lawrence has been the MVP of this defense this season. He has had a monstrous year. I think, what is it now, 7.5 sacks for a nose tackle?
Yes.
That's unheard of. That's unheard of.
Oh, my gosh. He's been great. And by the way, let me bring up this point to show you how much cultures have changed and maybe use a little comparison. When Kayvon Thibodeau got that sack and did that celebration. Now, granted, I don't disagree with you. I do think the Snow Angels was kind of excessive.
Well, that's something I would have did. Yeah.
At the same time, I also, there's no way he could have actually seen him on the ground when that happened, like physically.
Sure.
What did the Colts do about that? Absolutely nothing. Not one offensive lineman jumped up in his face and said, hey, you can't do that. Whereas if something like that happened to Jones, do you think anybody would tolerate that sort of stuff if that happened to Daniel Jones?
John Feliciano and Ben Bredesen would be all over them. Nick Gates would be all over them. Those 3 guys are like aggressors. And that's nothing against Andrew Thomas and Mark Lewinsky, but those 3 guys are just ruthless aggression animals. They don't care. You know, they'll get right up in your face and do stuff. So I agree 100%. there's a culture problem with the Colts. And I'm glad there's not a culture problem anymore with the Giants. And I think that's the point you were trying to make there, Hank.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
And how about X? With his first game back in, look, I was not expecting the guy to play. If anything, I thought Adoree would play and McKinney wouldn't, but he was just activated off the non-football injury list on Thursday, which opened his 21-day window. Hank, the man had 1 day of practice, and he's playing on Sunday. I mean, how incredible is that? Granted, it's a win-and-in game. You want to get as many.
He had 7 tackles.
7 tackles, a pass defended. He had a decent game. He really had a decent game for his first game back, and I think he'll be huge in that secondary. Clear upgrade over Jason Pinnock, I'll tell you that. I mean, McKinney has had trouble staying healthy throughout his first 3 years. Last year, he was relatively healthy, but the year before, remember, he missed a good fraction of the season with an injury. So, I mean, I'm thrilled he's back, and he couldn't be back at a better time. So I was happy with that. I was happy with Landon Collins, pick 6, 52-yard touchdown. He had another pass defended. He's getting better in coverage. Back to the offense, though, for a minute. One thing I was not impressed with, I think Darius Slayton's starting to get faded out of this offense, Hank. I don't know about you. The fumble didn't sit well with me. He only had 2 catches. He's getting outplayed by Hodgins and James and Bellinger as well, the rookie tight end. I don't think Slayton, unfortunately, has a place on this team next year. I don't know if you feel the same way about that, but do you agree?
Yeah, I think that fumble at the beginning of the third quarter, which I actually missed because I was literally on my way back to the seats, because the problem with MetLife is whenever you get out and walk around during halftime, like there's such a big crowd of people, you can't get to your seat right away. But in any event, when I heard that it was him who fumbled, I'm thinking, looks like he's probably just ruined his shot of being on the team next year, because I think we could tell over the course of the season he was slowly getting phased out. And it's a shame because, Tom, I know you're probably in the same boat as me, but I was rooting for him to try to improve and redeem himself. I really was thinking, with all the injuries we had to our receiver core, this would have been the chance for him to really go back to being the guy that we saw in 2019 with his production. But unfortunately, if you're going to consistently have moments like that, probably a good chance he's not going to be on the team next year, which, again, I don't take any pleasure saying that, but that's the reality.
He is on a contract year, and with the Giants, reportedly, it was reported by Jordan Rodon, Ian Rappaport, several others, that the Giants are working on multi-year extensions for both running back Saquon Barkley and quarterback Daniel Jones. You're prioritizing those 2 guys. You can't keep everybody. Slayton's probably a goner. O'Shane Zimenez, no chance he comes back. Kenny Golladay probably gets cut after June 1st. So there's a lot that could happen this offseason that is going to revolve around keeping your core pieces intact. And I think, part of that is keeping your leaders intact, and Saquon and Jones. As much as people argue that, the running back, it's a replaceable position. Sure, the production can be replaced, but can you replace the leadership? That's the question. You could draft the running back. You could do what the Giants did in 2005 and draft Brandon Jacobs. Draft, Deuce Vaughn had a pretty good game for Kansas State, or Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia. Draft one of those 2 guys to be Saquon's backup for a couple years. And then if Saquon starts to decline, fine. You have a replacement right there. If the injuries come back, you have a replacement who's groomed up. Not to mention Breida had a great game on the ground as well. The Colts, outside of that 49-yard lucky pass there by Paris Campbell, I don't want to say it was lucky. It was more bad coverage by the Giants. I thought the Giants played very well. They outgained the Colts 394 to 252. They had 217 rushing yards, the Giants. And here's the difference maker, Hank. While each team had 1 turnover, the Giants had only 3 penalties and controlled the ball for over 31 minutes. Yep. And the Giants are now 5-0 against the AFC this year. And even better, you really want to break down Daniel Jones's game. the 7 drives he had against the Colts. Now, he only had 7 because they were long drives, and most of them resulted in scores. 4 touchdowns, a field goal at the end of the half, the Darius Slayton fumble. So that's 6 drives right there. And then on the first possession of the game, the Giants were forced to punt due to a missed third down defensive pass interference. Those were the 7 drives Daniel Jones was in the game for.
He was absolutely phenomenal. And again, I'm going to reiterate what you said. If you don't think that Daniel Jones is a guy that's capable of being a franchise quarterback for the Giants, I don't really know what to tell you.
Yeah, look, you had every right to be hesitant about him up until this year. You can't justify denying him as a franchise quarterback any longer. He's done it on a consistent basis all year. He's performed. It's not always about the flashy numbers. It's about the winning plays that he makes. And he's made monumental comebacks this year, and he's been working with a lot less than most other quarterbacks have this season.
It matters.
The eye test matters, and Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen feel the same way. So, I trust Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen over a lot of these Twitter GMs. And how about Daboll getting that Gatorade bath from Julian Love and Jihad Ward? He really deserved it. Oh, man. I love that dude. He's our head coach. He is here to stay. I'll tell you that much. You see that hug between him and Joe Schoen? There's chemistry there between the Giants coaching staff and their front office. And when a GM and a head coach are on the same page, they're hugging each other like that, that's a really good sign for the future. A really good sign.
Yeah, you don't really – I was going to say, when did you hear of Dave Gettleman going over and hugging like any of his coaches?
That's right. 100% right. And before we go, just want to say happy Duncan Monday, by the way, Hank. A little disappointed you don't have Duncan with you right now, but it is Giants Victory Monday. I'm just teasing. But quickly, we're not previewing Philadelphia. This is strictly a recap video, but I want the Giants to start everybody next week. I'm not saying I want them to play the whole game, but remember that phone call Tom Coughlin got in 2007 from John Madden. You play to win the football game. And if you bench everybody, now they have a week off. They could be out of sync in some departments if they go into the playoffs all with a week off, not getting any reps against Philadelphia. They need reps against the Eagles. I don't care even if they only play one half, like they still have to play in this game. I'd love to see them play the entire game. To be honest with you, I think that's the best scenario. Now, people may disagree with me, and that's fine. I understand the other side of the argument. You don't want to risk any injuries. Sure. I also really want to beat the Philadelphia Eagles and knock them out of the 1 seed. That's how I feel, personally speaking. And this could be good practice if the Giants are to meet with them again in the NFC playoffs. The Eagles are trending down right now. Why not add more fuel to the fire? What benefit do the Giants get this season from benching their starters in Week 18? You really have to think about it that way. What benefit do they get? That they're healthy against Minnesota? How about getting those reps in against elite NFL teams or coming back from that 48-20-22 loss we had? We want to perform better against them. It's not always about resting and you play to win the game. And that's all I have to say, Hank.
Yeah, look, I'm definitely with you. I mean, look, personally, I'm fine with like them at least starting the first half just so that like they can continue to get those reps in. But with that being said, if you want to start them in the second half and let them keep going, like give them the chance to beat Philly and gain that extra set of confidence, I have no issue with that whatsoever. And as much as I'd love to say retribution from, that little thing that Doug Peterson pulled at the end of the 2020 season, I don't know if I can truly like say that in my heart, because I know deep down that realistically, with the butterfly effect, may have been one of the best things that could have happened to the Giants.
Helped us 100% that the Eagles did that in the long run. We'll explain more about that on Thursday, folks. But Hank, appreciate you joining me here for this video. Remember, if you like what you watch, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe for notifications, get that bell rang. Also, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You see all the handles below. Appreciate all the support. Make sure to go check out our film review. We'll be putting up a film review later this week and our Week 18 preview against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles. That's right. Without further ado, folks, let's go Big Blue.